Okay, so I'm using a different name than what's on the schedule, so heretofore I am Brian James, and the reason for that is that I work in some more sensitive areas, and when stuff gets online, I want to try to have that cause as few problems as possible. So my name is Brian James, and we're looking today at building bridges to the unengaged through media. And Elizabeth, you want to go ahead and hit the next slide there? Okay. Let's see what we can do here. There we go. Let's see, where are we? Oh, we're on 10 of 25.
Let's say you visit another country.
So I think somehow it's took out. Yeah. There we go. Okay. So now I think we're okay.
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 Thanks for your patience.
So these are my partners in crime. I've got a business background originally, information technology and marketing. Spent time in global consulting work. Living in the Washington D.C. area. Long before I met this beautiful woman and had kids. And while I was living there and while I was working in business, I had an experience that undid me. Elizabeth, go ahead and hit the next screen there. This is the reality that slapped me in the face one fall while I was sitting in a perspectives course. The reality of the task that was remaining. I was a young believer, knew that I was called to honor Christ, that I was his ambassador, and when I was confronted with the reality of this task that was remaining, which was even greater back then because this was more than 25 years ago, more than 12,000 people groups around the world, and you guys have, I'm sure, seen many of these numbers, over 7,000 of them still unreached, more than 3,000 of them still unengaged. How could this be almost 2,000 years after the church was established? This undid me, in the words of Isaiah. I was undone when I heard this, and felt incredibly, just felt this unmistakable desire to go. I had to do something. I wasn't sure what. Go ahead and hit the next slide there, Elizabeth. So as a believer, and go ahead and hit these, yeah, there we go. You can stop on that one. This verse really resonated with me, and especially more now today when we see, thinking about media, what can happen today. Habakkuk 2:14, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. How could that possibly be? 2,000 years of church history and still being confronted with the reality of that task that remained. How could that be? And as a believer, as a young believer, feeling called to make my life count for the sake of the gospel, I felt I had to do something. Colossians 4:5, make the most of every opportunity. I felt that I needed to do that, but how? How do we do that? Elizabeth, go ahead and do it. Thomas Edison said this. He said, discontent is the first step, or is the first necessity of progress, right? I had that holy discontent. I think you guys do as well. You're in this room. You're at this conference this weekend. We have that holy discontent of something must change. We need to do something. God has called us to join Him in mission. We've got the reality of that task remaining, not just the unreached, but the unengaged. Go ahead. So I grew up in Virginia Beach. I'm a California boy, Navy brat, but I grew up in Virginia Beach. And you can see Virginia Beach there at the bottom of the screen. Just across that bridge there, you can see this beautiful green area, pristine coastal area that we enjoy going to from time to time to fish, to swim, to do other things. Not terribly far, about 30 miles from my home as the crow flies. And thankfully, because of that bridge, we couldn't quite go as direct as the crow flies, but we could come pretty close. It would take about an hour. Now, without that bridge, Elizabeth, go ahead and hit that next one. Without that bridge there, this is how we would have had to travel. Up to Richmond, Virginia, over there to the northwest, all the way up to Washington, D.C., to Baltimore, up to Wilmington, Delaware, all the way down through what we call the Delmarva Peninsula, the Delaware, Maryland, Virginia Peninsula, and then all the way down that skitty stretch of land, all the way down to that little point at the very end. About 12 hours. So thankfully we had that bridge. It made what was otherwise inaccessible accessible to us, to enjoy the beauty of that area. Bridges are an incredible blessing. Okay. So Francis Schaeffer gave us this charge many years ago. Any Francis Schaeffer fans? Theologian from is now past, but modern. Each generation of the church in each setting has the responsibility of communicating the gospel in understandable terms, considering the language and the thought forms of that setting. That's a little bit of a mouthful. But as believers, as the church today, we have the responsibility of considering what are the language and thought forms of today that we are called to communicate the gospel in. And so, not surprisingly, what I'm suggesting to you today is the language and thought forms today is media. It's the language of media. Okay, go ahead and hit the next. And I think you have to hit it one more time to play this video.
Say you visit another country. You have an important message to bring. In order to bring that message, you must speak the local language. Meet Yusuf. He lives in Cairo. Like half the world's population, he lives off less than $5 a day. Though he doesn't own a computer, he always carries his cell phone, surfs the internet with his friends, watches films every weekend, and lives in a home where the TV is on all day long. Whether he knows it or not, Yusuf is developing a worldview, a framework that gives meaning to his life. He's learning a language. How is his worldview shaped? Image after image, story after story, hour after hour, his heart is filled with messages from a broken world. He's becoming fluent. If Yusuf is being influenced by the 5 hours of content he consumes every day, what about Andrea? Every day, Andrea will spend 7.5 hours wiped over cell phone, TV, laptop, and iPod, taking in 11 hours of media. So what does this mean for Andrea? She's becoming an expert in today's language of media. Each day, she will be exposed to 500 marketing messages and dozens of sexual references and acts of violence. She'll be led to believe that she lives in a world without hope, that she'll never be pretty enough, and that she can never be truly loved. How can Yusuf and Andrea discover the true story of their existence? In the midst of the deceptive messages, how will they understand the truth of the God who loves them? Who will translate? We will, but to do so we must communicate in their language, the language of visual story. Jesus revealed the kingdom through stories related to the everyday lives of people. You and I can do the same, using visual media. Whether it's through cinema or television, computers or cell phones, we must create and use compelling visual media that speak honestly and biblically about the issues of the heart, so the next generation can discover life change through Jesus. For 1,500 years, God's people communicated through preaching. In the last 500 years, printing accelerated the spread of the good news. Today, we must also portray the truth of Christ and his kingdom. There is another culture being formed, another world focus on corrupting ideas completely of its own label. Much like crossing a border to reach another people group, we must reach out through the televisions, computer screens, and mobile phones of tomorrow's leaders. Together, we must learn to speak to Yusuf and Andrea and countless others around the world with the powerful language of visual story.
Now, this kind of hones in on, this video honed in on the power of visual story, but I would argue that it's not just visual story, it's audio, it's images, social media, and a variety of other media forms, apps. All of them carrying incredible weight today. They really have become, in so many ways, the second language of people around the globe today. And what I think is so fascinating, and all of this thanks to this little device right here, has reached into every country, every city, every village, every remote area around the globe today. Now, they may not have fancy new smartphones. Increasingly, they have smartphones. Far more than 50% of the world's population are using smartphones. But even those older phones are still very media-capable phones, with very, 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 very rare exceptions of those phones that may just do voice and text. You can go out into the bush and chat, and you're going to find people on old smartphones. They may not look great, but they're very media-capable. And I'll tell you, they'll run circles around us in how they're able to use those phones. Did it surprise you, if watching that video, they mentioned how much time Andrea and Yusuf were spending on media, the amount of media that they were consuming? Those figures surprise you? So I would argue these numbers are probably low in many cases. And I would say, particularly in many of the parts of the world that we're considering, thinking of the unreached and the unengaged, oftentimes these numbers are far, far higher. The numbers I hear from colleagues working in the Middle East, particularly among those, say, 30 and under, but these numbers, it's not limited to just the young, but at least among younger people, a minimum of 8 hours a day spent on social media alone. Okay? It's not surprising. I watch my kids. I've got 4 kids, ages 15 to almost 21. And I walk in, I go visit my mother-in-law across the street. She's 86. Inevitably, she's sitting there on the chair. She's got the TV on, and she's got her phone in her hand, and she's simultaneously consuming media from both sources, right? And this is a global phenomenon, right? I mean, when we stop to just get a hint of the influence that is pouring through the mobile phone today, and pouring through the screens and the speakers that we're subjected to, it's incredible the influence that is having all over the globe. It doesn't matter how remote you are. Even in places that are completely disconnected from the internet, from airwaves, they've still got mobile phones, and they've got micro SD cards in those phones that are filled with videos and audio stories. And they're listening to that hours and hours a day at 15,000 feet up in the mountains in Afghanistan. Okay? Doesn't matter where you are. Yeah, that's fine. We'll go through these kind of quickly because we got a late start. Social media continues to rise. And these numbers are old. These are almost a year old now. 4.62 million. Let me just highlight that third number over there on the top. 10%, just over 10% growth of social media users from 2021 to the beginning of 2022. Okay, social media is continuing to escalate. It's not slowing down. It's continuing to gain more and more and more people. We often measure social media in terms of monthly and daily active users. Those numbers are also rising. The number of people that are using them daily and monthly, and the amount of time that they're spending on these social platforms continuing to rise. So this is just a trend all across the world. And again, I would say in many parts of the world, it's growing even much more rapidly than it is here in the U.S. Okay, I mean, pretty steady progression, right? And this is not slowing down. These numbers are all online. You can get it through Hootsuite and We Are Global. They update this data regularly, and they've got it for most countries in the world, which is great. So if you're interested in a particular country, you can find data, country-specific data for them. Okay, internet usage. About 4.95 billion people connected to the internet, 62.5% of the world population. Again, continuing to grow steadily, 4% year-over-year change over the previous year. Almost 7 hours average daily time spent on the internet. Okay, almost 7 hours. Largely that's coming through the mobile phone. 92% of this access is coming through the mobile phone. Okay, most people across the world, they don't have a computer, all right, but they've all got mobile phones. So Dr. Wayne Dye, who's still with us, thankfully, older, but very renowned missiologist with SIL, commented that the mobile phone is the most significant missiological development of the past 200 years. Why would he say that?
Because, like, I'm just thinking of the amount of things that you can do on a mobile phone kind of thing, and the amount of consumption that it completely grabs your focus and stuff. But
Yeah.
it's huge as far as being able to use that on a mission basis.
Yeah.
It would make sense.
Yeah, we think of the media that we're consuming through the mobile phone, the information that we have access to. There's incredible secularization in the world of Islam right now because people have access to information like never before. They're able to explore things. They're able to explore ideas, get confronted with different ways of thinking than they've ever been before. And it's changing the world of Islam, which is the context that I'm in.
Brad,
Yeah.
I know when we're overseas, we have to be careful about our security and stuff, but is it a more secure way for them to access this information than, the way we shared it traditionally?
So is the mobile phone a more secure way of accessing information? It can be. There are secure ways, and that is one of the things, thinking strategy-wise, that we need to take into consideration. There are many ways for us to distribute media and materials, the Bible, Bible study apps, all kinds of resources securely using micro SD cards, using secure apps in other ways. So it can be. Yeah. Clyde Tabor, head of the Visual Story Network, just commenting on why someone like Dr. Wayne Dye would say the mobile phone is the most significant missiological development of the last 200 years. The mobile phone is the biggest screen in the world today. Okay, hands down. It's the most accessible. We have it with it. We have it. I mean, how many of you leave home without your mobile phone? Or feel anxious if you do. You realize, oh my gosh, I've got to go back in the house. I left my phone.
Problem is I can actually leave the house without my phone and survive, but I actually have my license in the same pocket as my phone. So when I'm driving, I'm like, well, I'm driving illegal today. This is fun.
Yeah. And even then, though, I mean, what a commentary. Your phone has become your wallet. And for many, very literally, it's become our wallet with digital banking. So what I suggest to you today is that media and the mobile phone, the vehicle through which all of this media is being consumed nowadays, is an incredible bridge. Just as that bridge, when I was a kid, connected me to the Eastern Shore just an hour away versus a 12-hour drive, if we're brave enough to do that. We dare not do it today with gas prices being what they are. But media is an incredible bridge for the sake of the gospel. It's a bridge to the unreached, and it's a bridge to the unengaged even. It is a shared language, right? We saw that video about Yusuf and Andrea. But all of us have become media consumers, incredible media consumers. I think that's, the phone has obviously accelerated that. But not just media consumers now. Because of the phone especially, we've also now become media creators. All of us, to some degree, have become media creators. We're posting on social media. We share photos of families, friends, events, whatever it may be. We are constantly putting content out there for others to consume. It may be text, it may be in the form of email or messaging apps, but increasingly there's a visual aspect to it as well. It is a shared language. We all share that language. I can walk anywhere, I can go anywhere in the world today, and in fact this is an experiment that I try when I travel, and I can pull out my phone. I do this just to see. I'm waiting for the time for this to fail, and it's never failed yet. But I can pull out my phone and ask somebody if they want to see a video on my phone, and they will always say yes. A complete stranger. On an airplane, in a bus, out on the street, in the bazaar, doesn't matter where I am, if I say, do you want to see this video? Without fail, young or old, could be a 75-year-old man on the street, it could be a teenager or a 20-something working in the shop, they will say yes to watching a video. Okay? Without fail. It's a shared language that we have. And of course this device, the most ubiquitous piece of technology in history, makes it the most reproducible ministry tool we've ever had. I don't need to teach anybody how to use this device. I may need to help them understand how it can be used for ministry, but in terms of how to use this device, they already know. They probably know far more than we do in most cases. So media prepares the way. I love this about media. We're going to touch in a moment on something called media to movements, a strategy that's being employed more and more all over the globe. But media is preparing the way for the Lord. It's going ahead of us. It's allowing us to allow the gospel to go ahead of us and to prepare hearts and minds. When I lived in Central Asia, I lived in 3 different countries in Central Asia. When I lived in Kazakhstan, we had a countrywide project where we distributed Bible portions as much as we had at the time, little Bible pocket, or little pocket Bibles that were distributed to every school-age child in the country. This was a project many years in the making, lots of negotiating, lots of partnership building, and finally we got approval to do this. Many of those Bibles, mullahs, imams, Muslim leaders around the country fueled up dissent, and many of these Bibles ended up getting burned in public book burnings, but still hundreds of thousands at least were widely distributed and read. I would be on a train. The next city from mine was a 30-hour train ride away. We were in a remote area. Inevitably, on that train ride, a year or two after these Bibles got distributed, somebody would approach me and say, "Do you know what this book is? I found it, or I got it from my child. I have no idea what it is, but I've read it cover to cover 3 times. Do you know what it is?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, actually I do." Okay? And this happens so many times. Those Bibles permeated the culture. And what they couldn't do is connect people to somebody that could explain it to them. Thank God for divine connections and long train rides and things like that. But Bible is a way of preparing the way by getting the word out there. We, with these media strategies now, we are launching not only websites, but Facebook pages and a variety of other digital engagement resources. Just by the mere fact that they're out there, people are, of course, finding them. They're searching, they discover things. Social feeds, social algorithms are designed to help people find things based on things that they're searching for. It is discoverable by the mere fact that it's out there on the internet, or on Facebook, or on Instagram, or wherever it may be. I'll pull up an example of a site in a second, but I noticed when I pulled this site up, because Instagram tells me if I have shared friends who like the same account that I have. I just noticed that the first time I saw this site was actually yesterday, and I immediately noticed that an old friend of mine in Kazakhstan, who I have not seen for 20 years, also follows this same account. How he discovered it, I have no idea, but Instagram knows what he likes and has connected him, and he's now followed this account. I'll show you an example of this in just a second, but merely getting this content out there has an incredibly powerful passive effect on people. There's a Korean brother who launched a Facebook page to introduce Yemenis to the scriptures. He wasn't trying to engage them in any way in terms of interactions. He didn't feel like he had time for that, but he knew the language, and he knew how to work with Facebook, and so he started a Facebook page. Millions of Yemenis and others around Yemen consuming millions of hours of gospel video content through Facebook. Every video, we often measure the level of engagement through how long people will watch those videos. You can actually get statistics. Do people click away after a few seconds, after a minute? What's the average? On average, most of his videos were getting watched all the way through. A 5-minute video that's nothing but scripture and beautiful scenery, and millions of Yemenis and others around the Arab Gulf watching these videos, video after video after video, just by the mere fact of that being out there. He wasn't doing anything to promote this content. He wasn't advertising. He just put it out there and it got discovered. It prepares the way. And when we think about reaching the unengaged, I'm thinking again how I was undone all those years ago sitting in a perspectives class. That makes me feel undone. The fact that there are so many people groups yet engaged with the gospel. And to think about what we could potentially do. Sitting here in Gilbert, Arizona, or wherever God has us, to put content out there on the web that speaks to those people, that is discoverable by those people. Media provides access to inaccessible peoples and places. There are places that we can't get to very easily. Most of the unengaged peoples and places around the world today are unengaged for a reason. They're hostile to outsiders. It's difficult to get visas, maybe. They're inaccessible, they're remote. Whatever the reason is, they're typically unengaged for a reason. But media has access. They have access to media. The fact that I can sit here at any moment, I get up in the morning and I check my messages, probably you do as well, and I pull up Facebook, Messenger, or WhatsApp, or Signal, whatever the platform, I've got them all on here. And I've got messages from someone in Nigeria, from somebody in Pakistan, from somebody in the UAE. It's just, it blows my mind. And what's even crazier is that I can send them a reply, and about 2 seconds later, I've got a reply back again from them. The way that media has bridged the gap and given us access into inaccessible places and to inaccessible peoples is unbelievable. It's an incredible opportunity. So there's two ways that I want to highlight real quickly, two broad categories, or two broad approaches to using media as a bridge. The first is personal, right? We have personal opportunities that we can employ to make use of media. Every believer can equip his or her phone with relevant media to enhance their personal ministry. Being able to equip these phones, the Jesus Film. Anybody have the Jesus Film app on their phones? Okay, Elizabeth does. Okay, the Jesus Film app, we're all familiar with the Jesus Film. The Jesus Film app puts in your phone, in your pocket, every translation of the Jesus Film. More than 1,200 languages of the Jesus Film, instantly available anytime, anywhere. Now, of course, you need to have access, Wi-Fi or cellular access, to actually get access to those films. But assuming you're connected, you've got instant access to all 1,200 plus language variations of the Jesus Film, and a whole host of other content as well. Not just the Jesus Film, but Magdalena Film, My Last Day, which is a powerful anime film, and a whole host of other films. Being able to equip our phones with media, with appropriate media that we're available to share anytime, anywhere. I'm in London, and I have a conversation with someone who I discovered is from Pakistan. And in the course of conversing with him and hearing a little bit about his story while I'm on my way to the airport or hotel or wherever I'm going, pulling down in Urdu a clip from the Jesus Film. And before we part ways, before I pay him or just say farewell, because now we use Uber and we just get out of the car and go, pulling out my phone and saying, do you want to see a clip? I think this is in your language. This is kind of this is we were talking about how Jesus can calm the storm. And do you want to see a video about this? It's just a couple of minutes long. Sure, I'll watch that video. Okay. We have the power to do that right now if we prepare our phones ahead of time to do that. Social media provides individual believers an opportunity to reach into the lives of people all over the globe. As I mentioned with Messenger or WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram. It's just amazing the connections that any one of us can make. Many years ago, when I was beginning to advocate for the use of social media to reach Muslims with the gospel, I partnered with a guy who had to leave the Middle East. He was working in an area of the Middle East for family reasons, had to leave, had not lost his vision for wanting to reach people in that part of the world, and decided that he wanted to try to reach people in another country, not the one that he had been living in, but one that was much more restrictive. And we talked about how to do this. And so he got on Facebook. And he said, I know that we can find people on Facebook. He didn't speak Arabic well enough, to engage with people in Arabic. So we said, I'm going to try to find English speakers. I'm going to try to find them in one of 3 cities that I can get to fairly easily in case I have opportunities to follow up with them. And so, using some simple tools in Facebook, he began searching and compiling lists of people, and he would message them over Facebook and say, "Hey, you don't know me. My name is Brian, and I just love to share something with you. Have you ever read the Injil, the Gospels from the Bible? Do you know who Jesus is? Can I tell you some things about him?" Now, most people would write him something inflammatory back, or just say no, or just ignore his message. But many would respond and say, "Yeah, I'd love to hear more." Enough were responding, in fact, that every 3 or so months he would get on a plane and he would fly over to this highly restricted country where ministry is incredibly difficult. And he would sit in a coffee house, having messaged people and said, "I'll be in this coffee house at this time. Come meet me." And he would sit there for days on end in this coffee house while person after person after person that he had met over Facebook would show up to meet him and to learn more about Jesus. And he did this from his home in Mississippi, sitting on his phone a few hours a day, typing out messages, beginning to just connect with people. Amazing what he was able to do. We've taken that same strategy now. You can taking that same approach. It's gotten much more.
A missionary work.
Well, yeah, go ahead and play that one. This is just an individual story, but yeah, you can go ahead and play that.
Karina, a missionary working in another country, was pleased to be making progress with the local language and making new friends. She was excited to receive an invitation out to a village one day to visit a family that she had met. When she arrived, Karina found the family was celebrating something. They shared how a precious coin that had been lost was found just before she arrived. Karina was immediately reminded of a similar story from the Bible. She eagerly began trying to share with them the parable of the lost coin, but her language skills were too limited. She finally gave up in frustration, and the family was disappointed not to have heard her story. Karina later told a teammate about the experience. He said, "I have an idea. Why don't we make them a quick Bible story video?" And in just 1 short hour, he was able to create a new video with some still images, local music, and a portion from the audio Bible in the local language that told the parable of the lost coin. It seemed to Karina like a great resource, but would it play on the family's phones? They only had simple feature phones. However, as her teammate explained, even these non-smartphones with small screens can play media. Using free software, they quickly converted the video into the right format for feature phones like the ones the family had. Karina visited the family again to share the video with them. They immediately understood the story, and they could not believe how much it paralleled their own story. They asked for a copy, so Karina sent it from her phone to theirs using Bluetooth. They later showed the video to extended family members, some of whom wanted a copy on their phones. They found the video so interesting that they asked Karina to bring them more of these wonderful video stories from the Bible. While Karina was not able to communicate the story clearly in the local language, the video could, and having it available in a format that worked on their phones allowed many gospel seeds to be planted.
Okay, so stepping back to that personal use of media and the ability to equip our phones with relevant media. This gal, true story, working in North Africa, she was not able to communicate this story in the scriptures. It was very frustrating. The family was frustrated because they wanted to know what she had to share with them, and they couldn't understand her. And just all it took was 1 short hour to make a quick video. The guy who helped her he didn't have a video background, but he had learned some just very simple ways to make a video and to get it onto the phone. Not only did the family really resonate with that story, and it stirred in them an interest to hear more about Jesus, but using Bluetooth, that video went from phone to phone to phone throughout their extended family. And what was one story getting shared with one person ended up being many stories getting shared with many people. And who knows how far that went? I have no idea. But we have the ability to do that. Media is frequently fluent in the language when we are not. I love that ability. I love, going back to the Jesus film, being able to share the gospel with people or share something of Jesus with people, something relevant to their lives. I may not understand what the video is saying. I already know the stories, right? We know the story of Jesus. But I can play it in their language for them, and I can give them a copy of it, and they can give it to their friends and their families, who can give it to their friends and their families. So, okay, yeah, go ahead and do the next slide. Okay, so on the strategic side, you can go ahead and hit it one more time. There's this idea of media to movement. So I shared about this guy Brian and what we were doing with Facebook, reaching people in the Middle East. This strategy has become much more developed now as social media has matured, and we've better understood the opportunities that are there. And of course, the entire world is making use of social advertising, being able to put ads out on Facebook or out on Instagram or even now TikTok and other platforms to identify or find people and whose hearts God is already at work. Now go ahead and hit it just one more time, Elizabeth. So media to movement refers to the intentional and strategic use of media. So it's a bit more involved than something that one person may do. But we're using audio, video, images, social apps, micro SD cards, web, digital advertising, very intentionally and strategically to initiate and nurture movements. We don't want to just see one person come to faith here or there. We want to see movements of people coming to faith. We want to see disciples who are making disciples, who are making disciples, who are making disciples. And we're using the power of media to do that. When I went to the field, I left for the field in 1995, was on the field on and off for about 12 years, and I did what a lot of missionaries do. I started learning language, I started learning culture, I lived in a Muslim community and began trying to meet my neighbors. Together with some of my teammates, we opened an office. We had an NGO doing nonprofit work. We began meeting people through that. We spent long hours drinking tea with hundreds and hundreds of people in different places at different times, beginning relationships with some of them, hoping that God might stir in their hearts, or that God might show us an interest in their hearts to hear more about the gospel. And in many cases, more often than not, we would invest months, if not years, in these relationships, only to discover that there wasn't really much spiritual interest at all. Now, I believe that God used that all that time that we spent together somehow. I feel like He is going to redeem that in some way. But I can contrast that with what we're able to do today. Using media, we now have people within days, sometimes hours, typically days or weeks now, identifying people. Most people have too many people now to follow up with. People who are already saying, I'm interested, I want to learn more about this Jesus. I want to see what the Bible has to say. Can we start meeting together to learn more about this? The biggest problem we have is not enough people to do follow-up in most of the places where people are doing these strategies. So it's incredibly powerful because of the reach of the mobile phone, the reach of social media, the power of social advertising to identify people and those social algorithms that are so well attuned to deliver to people what those algorithms know they want to see and hear, based on other things that they've been looking at, things that they've been searching for. So this has been a game changer in many parts of the world. Throughout the Middle East, you think of the most difficult to reach countries in the world. I'm not going to mention them, but if you think what would be some of the hardest to reach places in the world today, we have strategies going on in many of those countries right now. And they're not. Sometimes they might get shut down temporarily. There may be different challenges, but these are ongoing, and they're generating for us contact with people that are interested in learning more about Jesus. Sometimes even putting us in contact with believers who said, I thought I was the only one. I never knew there was another believer in my country or in my city. I've never met another believer before. And in many cases, these believers becoming partners in this work. Tremendously exciting. We ought to have a media to movement strategy for every people and place on the planet today. It's just people, we know people are out there searching. We know that God has gone before us. He's prepared hearts and minds to hear good news. And media and movement strategies are an incredible opportunity for finding out who those people are and beginning relationships with them. Here's one example.
Though I knew nothing about Facebook 9 months ago, now 9 months later I have more engagements than I can handle, really. I see Facebook and potentially other social media as a door opener to get into relationships, so I decided to use Facebook as a more or less an experiment to see if I can get into more hearts in many different places I couldn't walk to, and especially now that I'm settled back in the West. Anybody can do this. Some people could do more deeper, but it's building friendship through distance or up close and following through that the best we can. On Facebook, they post Quranic verses, they post friendship kind of things, like here's a photograph of us standing together. They post things like sports events, but also they talk about corruption and problems in society, the war, the things in the funnel that you are looking for that are disrupting society. I like to post things that are very provocative, deep, scriptural, and yet sometimes not focusing just on the visuals, but more on the content to make sure we don't have ambiguity. You know, what are they liking? Is it the photograph or the content? I want to make sure I understand they're liking the content as much as the photographs or visuals. $5,000 said, I like this, and maybe 30 said, basically, I want to kill you, or I want to make sure that no one looks at your page. Okay. And maybe 20 or 25 said, I love this. When someone says, I like your post, or I love your post, I want to respond to that somehow. And I prefer doing it individually, but with 5,000 likes, it's almost impossible. Whether a person's been engaging people for 4 years, 4 months, we all have an opportunity to engage deeply with local people, especially as we look them in the eye and do things for the local person that no one else is doing. That is showing genuine interest and love. With love and respect, inviting all Muslims to follow Jesus, but with love and respect, showing them you're a listener and you want to engage. Anybody can do this.
Okay, any questions on that? So this was not a guy that was a trained marketer. He was not a computer expert. He's not a video maker. Okay, he wasn't particularly enraptured with social media. He wasn't sitting there thinking, "Oh, I love social media. How can I figure out how to maybe use this for the sake of the gospel?" But he recognized that the people that he was trying to reach were on Facebook, and that presented him with an opportunity. And so he figured out how can I get onto Facebook and begin to engage them. And then it was in an area you can probably guess what country that was, but it's a country that is now more than ever cut off from outside influence. And he was going in regularly. Again, too dangerous to live there full time, but particularly in the city that he was mainly reaching people in, but was able to over Facebook, engage people every day, and then periodically get on a plane, fly over and meet with people. And as he said, when I'm meeting people, I know they're either going to try to kill me or they're going to come to faith in Jesus. I'm not sure which one. And both have, at least one has been attempted. That, he's had people try to do bad things to him, but by God's grace, through him, many people have come to know the Lord. This is an account. Just came across this yesterday through a colleague of mine in Dagestan. Dagestan, when we think about unreached and unengaged peoples, Dagestan is off the charts. so many people groups in a very difficult mountainous region, almost all Islamic or almost all Muslim. This is their Instagram account. They determined in terms of social platforms the best way to reach out to people. They estimate, based on the statistics that they're seeing, that they've now been seen, their content has been seen by more than 1/3 of everybody in Dagestan. Okay? Now, does that mean that they have seen hundreds of thousands or millions of people coming to faith? No. But that power, that influence of this media that is pointing people to Jesus, that is speaking, sharing spiritual truth to them based on needs that are common throughout that region of the world, people are consuming that, and they're coming back for that. They have about 41,000 followers, but the reach of that content is far beyond that, because many more people who are not following them on Instagram are still getting exposed to their content. So, tremendously exciting what we have the ability to do today. Okay, next steps. You can just hit it 2 more times. So, if you're a missionary, anybody in here actively involved in mission, cross-cultural missions? No. What's your role?
I work for a nonprofit that works with foster children
Okay.
here in the valley and stuff, and I'm actually finishing up nursing school to be able to go overseas as a missionary, so I'm not mobilized as of yet.
Okay, wonderful. How about you? What's your role? Just kind of interested, or you have a formal role?
My wife and I work some with New Generations.
Okay.
And we're looking in the next couple of years.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Good. Yeah. How about you?
My wife and I served a few years overseas, and we're ready to do some more.
Wonderful. Okay. Are we hitting time?
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. You're more than welcome to do that. Okay. Well, listen. If you are actively involved in missions, and even if that's locally, particularly if you have opportunities to reach people from other cultures, learn the language of media. Okay. Most missionaries invest years, oftentimes, trying to learn the language and culture of another people and place, so they can communicate effectively in that culture. The second heart language of people today is the language of media, and we need people to understand that this is a language. You may not consider yourself a big fan of social media. You may not be one of those people who loves to binge on Netflix on the weekends. But the fact that the people that we are trying to reach all over the globe are on media, they are consuming media, we need to become good students of using this language to reach people with the gospel. And getting your phone equipped, as we talked about earlier. If you're a mobilizer, we need creatives, content creators, video creators, people gifted in audio storytelling, photographers, videographers. We need people with marketing skills, technologists, people who can develop websites and apps, other technology solutions. We need these skills now more than ever, and not just for the back office where these people have typically been working. Hey, let's work for the marketing department and help do fundraising for the organization. Or we need technologists to run the office network for the home office. No, we need these people on the front lines. We need these people now creating content that is actively being used to reach unreached peoples and places with the gospel. And if you're a strategist or an influencer, let's influence people. Let's help them understand that these opportunities exist and encourage them to learn about these in preparation for the work that they're doing. Elizabeth, one more slide. Okay, so here's a challenge to you. Regardless of which one of those roles that you fill, this one is for all of us. Okay? And this is a personal challenge to you if you'll accept it. This is a course that we just launched that I think speaks to every one of us, given the opportunities that we have today, given, I would say, the responsibility that we have today to communicate the gospel using the language and thought forms appropriate today. This is a quick 1-hour course that will equip you to begin to do that. It's video-based, short 2-3 minute lessons, and it's going to introduce you to some ways that you can equip yourself and equip your mobile phone, whatever your ministry is, to use media and your mobile phone to be more effective in ministry. You can click to one more slide, and it'll have that URL up there as well if you want it. Just some contact information, some places for more information. And let me stop there. I know we're just about up time-wise. And I think we have time for a couple of questions.
I just love this. I've been so moved by this, Brett. I mean, it just, my generation, I'm not really good at this kind of thing, but I've thought, being home from Egypt, I still have connection with my friends in Egypt. And this today has made me think of ways that I can, engage with them more in sharing, even though I'm not there for a while.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this is exciting. And I was going to ask about the opportunity to learn more, so thank you for sharing those things.
Yeah. That's all right. If you guys missed anything that was up there, sorry for the technology challenges as well. You guys have been very patient in trying to.
I was curious, you had very briefly mentioned an anime app, or animated app, or something.
An anime video, yeah.
Anime video, is it like they made an anime of Bible stories?
It's called My Last Day, and it's the story, if I remember correctly, it's the story of the thief on the cross, and so it's his last day, and it's told from his eyes. It's done by the Jesus Film, and it's in the Jesus Film app or on the Jesus Film website, just jesusfilm.org, or the app for Android or iPhone is just a Jesus Film Project is the name of the app, and if you Google it too, it's called My Last Day. It's a very powerful film. They've got some other ones now. I think they came out with one in the last 12 months or so that's, I can't remember what the story is, but it's, anyway, but there's at least a couple of anime films in there.
That's cool.
So anime is really big, and particularly in a lot of Asian cultures. And
It's huge in Asian cultures, and it's growing here.
yeah,
It's growing
interestingly.
a lot here.
Yep.
And I'm teenagers that I've come across that are obsessed with anime.
Yeah, I say I don't get it. I'm not into it myself, but I know it speaks to a lot of people.
Well, I think it's so generationally, like a couple generations ago, it would be the same teenagers that were really into graphic novels, like
Yeah.
Superman and things like that.
Yep.
It's those kind of kids
Yeah.
that is really appealing to.
Yeah, and they're actually,
Different generation focus.
and the Bible has been done as a graphical.
Oh yeah. I've come across a couple of them. One of them better than the other. I've come
Yeah.
across a couple where I'm like, ooh, okay, whoever told your illustrators they were good at drawing lied.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there is one that's really good. I'm blanking out on the name of it, but it is a popular format in some areas. So. Okay, any other questions before we wrap up? I'm not sure if there's somebody coming in right after this or not, but
I think it's a lunch break.
Lunch break? Okay.
Yeah.
oh, okay, good.
It's their lunch/visit all the vendors break.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you guys. This is literally, this is a tremendous opportunity. It's just, I wish I had time to give you about 100 more stories of things that people are doing. And Elizabeth, you mentioned you led with with my age. Well, a good friend of mine, she didn't begin dabbling with this stuff until she was about 75 years old. She knew how to turn on her computer and do a Word document and maybe do email, and that was the extent. That was pushing it for her. But her husband died, and she said, "God, how can I make my life count for the sake of the gospel?" And so she said, I'm going to take 6 months to look at different opportunities. And at the end of 6 months, she said, the best way I can have an impact is through the mobile phone. And so she sat down and she learned how to make libraries of resources on micro SD cards, putting language-specific content on micro SD cards, flying to places like Bihar, India, and going out on the street and handing out these micro SD cards. She would say, people would say, delete the pornography on my phone and let me copy this onto it instead. Let me have the Jesus film. I want to just delete that pornography, just get rid of it.
That's incredible.
70, by the time she was getting over to India, she was almost 80. So
Oh, I love it.
anyway, lots of. This is very doable. Anyone can do this.
Little lady on my team just baked cookies for people.
That works too. That would work for me. So, yeah, but this is, and again, I think for many of us, we may not feel like this is our language, but it is the language that the world's speaking, and it's
Great.
Again. And if you travel, I challenge you, have a little video clip, be ready to share it with somebody and see. I've never found anybody to say no. Anywhere.
That's astounding.
Yeah, there's something about that.
That means you can give them the gospel.
Absolutely.
If you just walk up and say, "Can I give you the gospel?" they'll probably say no. And that's amazing.
Yeah, or if you want to hand them a Bible, they would say no. But
Yeah, that stunned me when you said that. That opens up a world of possibilities.
it does. Yeah, and because of the nature of media today, we say new media, it's digital media, which oftentimes is interactive and lots of other features of it, but the ability for us to instantly give them a copy of it. So it's not just us exposing them to something, but letting them walk away with that media and the ability they have to share it with still others. It's really, it's mind-boggling.
If we had to give out books, we couldn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You show people.
Usually, it'll depend on where I am and what's available. The Jesus film is not the most contextual film. The Lumo films now, we have Lumo, if you've heard of the Lumo. Lumo is a more modern film. It's using actors that look more appropriate. They're actors from the Middle East, and they're Palestinians. And it's 100% scripture. It's the four Gospels, 100% scripture, and they filmed it using basically gibberish, because the idea was to get it dubbed into every language. And so they were very creative so that it wouldn't look like it was dubbed. It looks like it was done in the local language.
It's like when you're on the choir and you don't know the words, you start saying watermelon.
I hadn't heard that, but Lumo, L-U-M-O.
That's the trick.
Yeah, and so that's a good one to have. But the Jesus film, for whatever its faults, its age, and its not white actors and stuff, the story communicates, and people love it. Because they resonate with Jesus. So I always have that on my phone because it's in.
Clip from it.
It's all segmented. If you have the app, there's about 61, I think, clips to about typically 1 to 3 minutes in length. So it's perfect in the context of a conversation. So, in that course that I mentioned, I share a little bit more about that. Not just me, a team of us, and how to use that. So trying to, ideally relating that to a story in your own life so you can follow that up with a personal testimony that we relate to them, and also thinking about what story might speak to them and their culture as much as you know. Hey, well, we made it work, but not up here.
Did you bring enough pizza for all of us?
Yeah.
It's like one of those pizza delivery boxes.
Okay. Oh, you got a pour coming? Okay. All right. Super. Yeah. Thank you guys very much.
It was so good.
Appreciate you
Thank
coming.
you.